I think the most important thing that I didn't understand this early enough is that you have to jump off the cliff and build the plan on the way down. That's the really hard part about starting a company and building and growing a company is like, the machine's not going to be built. Sitting there just waiting for you to get in the cockpit and take off. That will never be a thing. And I waited a long time for that and just realized like, we just need to do this. You just have to go for it.
Today we are recording a in-person oratory, which I'm always excited to do. And I'm here with my friend Curtis Johnson of Scout Discoveries. And we're going to talk about a whole lot of stuff, perhaps go rogue, off script, and all kinds of exciting things. So my favorite question to lead off with is, how did you decide to become an exploration geologist? What was your path from school? What sold you on this?
Well, good to see you. Thanks for coming to Idaho.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Why did I become an exploration geologist? I guess when I was a kid, my family is mostly a logging family. So I grew up in Western Washington, and so I knew that I wanted to work outside just at a base level. So I wasn't the greatest student, to say that, coming out of high school. But I knew I wanted to work outside. I knew I wanted to go to college. And the timber industry was in a pretty tough spot. It has been in the Northwest US for probably 30 years. So I had seen like some of the challenges of that just with like family members in the logging business. And so I decided not to do forestry, which was kind of the other option. And then I didn't know anything about geology like at all. But when I started at the University of Idaho, where I went to college, you had to declare a major. And I just like, what other things do you do outside? And I actually started in hydrogeology because I grew up on a river, so near a river. So anyway, I quickly realized there's way too much math in hydrogeology versus regular geology. So I switched that pretty quickly. But it was this prolonged experience of finding something that I became passionate about that I knew nothing about when I started. Like initially I liked the high level geology because Western Washington, I was in the foothills of the Cascades, pretty big mountain range, very prominent. And I found it really interesting to be able to explain the landscape. Like, why is this mountain here? And so that was like kind of this draw to geology. And that's kind of the first year, like earth sciences, you start to get into this big picture, plate tectonics, like all these things. And I found that interesting, but not really enough to drive a career. So I really started thinking about, how do I make money in this? If I'm going to do geology, it was really important to me that I could have a salary that was decent enough at the end of the line that would make it all worth it. Because I was the first person in my family to go to college, so it was kind of like this new foray for my broader family, and it was important to come out with a good career. And so it was. You just get on Google, right, and figure out like, what does a geologist do for work? And it's in general, like I landed that it's oil and gas or mining, like more or less. Because I like industry, I like equipment, stuff like that, coming from that background. And so I decided I'm going to try to do a mining internship and I'm going to try to do an oil and gas internship. And this was like 2009, 2010. Things were not great in oil and gas, and things were ripping in the mining space. Things were doing really well, 2010, 2011. And so I was like this, I tried to get an internship, didn't get anything. University of Idaho had no connections to the mining space, even though it used to be a prominent mining school. So I just I ended up going back and just did landscaping in the summer. My first summer after, I did Geology 101, 102, learning about the big picture stuff. And then you get into the more detailed geoscience. So you have a structural geology class and you have a igneous petrology class, like all the details. And I actually found that none of those I really liked enough to be like a specialist. What I really enjoyed was being a generalist when it came to geology. And it was like all this, you're looking back on time, so it seems to make sense like when you tell the story, but I was just weaving and bobbing, trying to figure this out, what I could do that I would enjoy. But it was all of this culminating in, I ended up getting an internship with Newmont Mining, which was this unbelievably fortunate situation that I sat next to this girl in calculus whose mom worked HR at Newmont in Nevada. And we just got talking about it because I had applied for Newmont the previous years and just didn't even get a call. And I now know that they largely recruit from a number of schools, right? The University of Idaho wasn't really on the list, but because her mom knew people in Winnemucca and Elko, they just pulled my application to actually look at it. And that's what allowed, it turns out the guy who hired me, Alex Davidson, who was the chief geologist at Leeville, he was from Idaho. And that was it. It was just this random connection that I got this mining internship, and then I started taking these advanced classes, and I just realized that I really like the mining business. I have no interest in oil and gas. I like hard rock. And then I like being a generalist. And a generalist, I think, is what an exploration geologist is. It's someone that is able to have some skill set in structural geology. You have to understand that. You have to understand all facets of geology and pull it together into, and then layer on the economic pieces of it. And so it's like all of that coming together where I really got interested in it. And then I think it was a news article. I ended up reading the autobiography of David Lowell too, but there was initially a news article I came across, and it just got into the details of discovery, like what a discovery is. And I think I had it as like this esoteric, like lucky thing that people come across, like the prospector going out and like finding a big gold vein or whatever, just pure luck. But when you read David Lowell's work and plenty of others, Roy Woodall and others since then, like it's clear that it's a skill set. And once I figured that out, was like a discovery creates enormous value. There's very few things that I know a couple of geologists who've made discoveries that have become mines that now employ 500 people. That was literally them with a rock hammer and some good field boots, took the first rock sample that ended up being a mine. And like, I just found that was just insatiable to me. And then I realized that it's a skill and you have to know things to have that skill. And so I ended up going to grad school multiple times to just try to get better, to make the right observations in the rocks, to be able to be successful. So anyway.
All the way through PhD and all the rest of the stuff. So coming from, I was an okay student, not great, all the way through pursuing this. And so like passion dictated your path, which is super cool.
Totally. Yeah. Like most of my high school professors would never believe that I even went to college. And then even in undergraduate, like I had no intention of going to grad school at all to start with, but it's just like, I found something I was interested in, and being successful in it is the skills that you have in your head while you're out there looking at the rocks. And that's what drove me. You need something driving you, I think, to go through grad school. Like I wasn't as much interested in having the letters PhD by my name. Like
you just wanted
actually,
to know.
like in the blue collar world, that's kind of like a negative, having that in some ways. But I wanted the skills. Like I wanted the skills. I wanted to know as much as I could.
Yeah. Super cool. So like awesome origin story. And then let's fast forward a bit. What drove you to start Scout?
I think I'm just a bad employee in general.
Me too.
I worked for Newmont for a couple of years after grad school, after my master's, and it was a great experience, but I'm just really bad with bureaucracy. I like to move quickly on things. I like to try new ideas. And when I was working in Nevada, I had an hour-and-a-half commute each way to the mine site. Listened to a lot of podcasts, and I somehow got into the Silicon Valley startup. I think it was, I don't even remember the podcast I was listening to at the time, but there was a lot of content on creating something from nothing. I just got enamored with that concept of like, how do you just build something from absolutely nothing? And so I spent a couple of years working in the mines, getting to understand what an ore deposit is, because you got to know what it is to be able to find one. Yeah. And then also refining my thinking around what I wanted to do. And I spent those few years really diving in on what does an exploration company look like, and just arriving at the conclusion that I wanted to start my own thing, because I wasn't going to do long term in a big company bureaucratic machine. And I could have done okay. I just didn't enjoy that.
Sure.
I really didn't like that. I haven't had 12 meetings to make a decision, that type of stuff. And that kind of led me to the decision to try to start something of my own. And at that point, I knew nothing about starting a company aside from listening to some podcasts around the Silicon Valley way, which is very different than most exploration companies that are out there these days.
And the idea of Scout is different inherently as well. Let's talk about how that started to happen, right? So not only did you decide to create your own company, you decided to create an exploration company that did it differently. So what makes Scout different?
Yeah, there's a lot of scar tissue around that, like around how we arrived at a different model. But I actually think a lot of it is a function of the early content I consumed around this. Like when you're, I guess in rural Nevada, working in a mine, like trying to figure out how do you start an exploration company. There's no book on how to start an exploration company at all. There's a lot of content on how to start a startup though, on the tech side. So I just consumed enormous amounts of content around that from a lot of thought leaders in that space. Very Tech companies, VC-backed tech companies, are not actually that much different from exploration companies, interestingly. And so I took a lot of the principles from that, which the big one for me is first principles thinking around what are you going after? What's the goal? And then this other concept of future casting, which is like, what is the goal in 10 years? Here's what the company looks like. We've made 5 discoveries. What did it take to get that? And so it's like you kind of future casted that, and then you try to recreate what that looks like. And you layer on the idea of first principles thinking around it, in that what is a discovery? A discovery it's getting the geoscience. So it's being in the right places, like the right places that will support building a mine. And then it's just a lot of drilling. And that's kind of what I realized, like working in a mine where you do a lot of drilling, and reading things like David Lowell, one of his famous phrases is like, I've drilled more dead holes than anyone else, and that's why I've drilled more successful holes. And I think that's right. You have to know as much as you can on the geology, but at the end of the day, you can't predict what's in the subsurface that well. Like, you need to drill a lot of holes. So I arrived at this conclusion that the thing that we have to do more than anyone is drill more holes, test more targets. And you don't want to you can't do one without the other. You can't just drill holes blindly, wildcat. Maybe you get lucky, but you'll probably run out of money before you do that. So you have to balance the two. You got to get the geology right. And so that was kind of the framing of the company, is let's boil this down. And then the other concept is just the idea of vertical integration, where like most junior explorers are heavily horizontally integrated in that they use subcontractors for basically everything. And I think the big inspiration is just the story of SpaceX around this. If you go into the story and the history of how that was created, it was very much first principles thinking of how do you build a rocket? How do you lower the cost by 10x to be able to enable things that are like Star, which is only possible when the cost of launching rockets is 1/50th of what it would be otherwise. And you compare SpaceX to NASA. I think NASA is very similar to how most junior exploration is run, where you have a couple employees and then just a sea of subcontractors. And the problem with that is all subcontractors have to make money, and there's always a margin on top of it. And so you get this margin stacking, and it ends up driving, I think, one of the big problems in junior mining, which is the amount of money that gets spent in testing things that, like, it's a high risk game. So like typically your projects are not going to be successful, but you want to go in it with the idea that you need to fail this as quickly as you can. You need to do it as cost effective as you can. And the best way to do that is to own that all internally. So vertically integrate all aspects of that quality geoscience bucket and the drilling bucket. If you can get that right, you can do it for half of others, which just gives you more shots on goal at the end of the day. So it was a lot of years, honestly, like thinking through this and then trying things. And I went out to start Scout in 2017, and I knew nothing about capital markets. I had no connections. There's a lot of stories around that whole piece, but it just didn't work, right? You just try things and you iterate, but we've always oriented around this idea of first principles of what are the key, like, distilled things that we have to get right if we're going to do this in a big way.
Yeah. I think some of my favorite interviews and people to talk to are founders, because I feel like the idea of failing fast is really important, and learning from those lessons to carry that forward and say, okay, like this, we're iterating on all of these lessons learned. And so putting that structure in place, I think, is a really cool concept, because some people are just like, we're just going to try stuff until it works. And like, you still have to systemize a little bit, even though you hate bureaucracy. So like, you clearly have done that.
And this is the current challenge of now. It's like, now we actually have to create a system. But yeah, I think like most of exploration is based around a project. It'll be like, this project's the next great thing. Let's build a company around that. And just odds are most projects are going to fail. So we very much took the opposite approach to that.
So in terms of building a company, you've tried to do different things across the board. So building your team looks a little differently. You've inherited some people that you've worked with previously, but what is your philosophy on building Scout in terms of the people concept and the culture?
People are the most important thing from every aspect. Rocks and projects come and go. They are, a project being successful at the end of the day is what creates value, but it's the people that derive that value from it. And you can take a great prospect, and if you put the wrong people on it, it's not going to work. You know? So that's something that we focused on in a serious way from the beginning. It's that, and then it's also maintaining institutional knowledge internally. We try, as you grow, you have to hire people outside, but most people that have started with us are still with us. And that's a real goal, because when we're drilling a project now that we started working on in 2019, and the same people that took the first samples on that project are still here at Scout. So we know exactly what the target is and how it's changed over time. And so we think a lot about bringing people in at the junior level and enabling them, like trying to build skills and capabilities through the ranks instead of trying to hire senior people from outside. You need to do both, but we very much lean on the training of people internally to try to build that team out and to get that people part right, because I think those that come fresh out of school or what have you, they get a really good understanding of our culture, and the culture is what enables people to be successful as part of it. And that's a really hard thing to slot senior people in that have different experience from different companies and different cultures. So we're really careful about that, like protecting the culture that we have, culture is a thing that you create. You create and you have to curate it and take care of that over time. And we think a lot about that.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me because I've worked in the mining industry and on the recruitment side for so long that occasionally I'll talk to people who have had long-standing companies and I say, what is your culture? And they've never thought about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me when I hear, I don't know. And it's one of the first questions I ask all the time. And so what does your culture feel like at Scout? What is the goal?
Yeah, you could define that a lot of different ways, but in a simple sense, it is the culture of Scout is hard work. It's built around this concept of exploration is hard. It's hard, and we like that. You have to accept that. But I probably staked thousands of claims in my life, done a lot of soil sampling, and this stuff is hard. And I think from the very top of the company, you have a pretty deep understanding of that. And that's kind of like the core of it, is that you got to enjoy, call it type 2 fun, right?
Yep.
You got to enjoy the stuff that's maybe not fun at the time, but it's fun to talk about at the campfire afterwards. And so it's kind of like bonding around that. It's team morale. It's moving quickly. That's a really important concept. And particularly in like deep geoscience, like you can get really bogged down in kind of the minutia. So we try really hard to train people in the culture to see the forest through the trees. What are we here doing? Yeah. We're not doing science. We're doing scientific things. We're doing geology, exploration, but this is a business that we're running here, and like understanding that at the cultural level of like how you think about everything, cost, spending, it's just driving towards that goal of a discovery and being efficient along the way. But it's work hard, move fast, and have fun. Like you got to have fun. You have to enjoy the people. We have a pretty staunch no asshole rule in the company.
This is my favorite rule.
It's like, it's amazing what you have a field camp of 10 people for a few weeks out. That can be an amazingly fun time, or that can be an amazingly miserable time, depending on who is there. And honestly, one person that is just difficult can really impact that. And we just don't have a lot of time for that. Yeah. So we're really careful with who we let on the team, who can go out on these types of things, especially if you're heli supported out in the middle, and you can't like just extract, like you can't just call it, you need to complete the task. And so it's just a really deliberate thinking around like that. It's the working hard, it's the moving quickly, and it's that having fun piece that life is really short. I do exploration because I like it, and I think we can create a lot of value doing this if we're really focused on the task at hand. Along the way though, like you get one life, you get one 30, 40 year career if you're lucky. And so like you may as well have fun doing it. And I think that if you can tie all those things together, you can build a really cohesive team around that enjoys doing the work that we do.
Absolutely. And it's what makes it fun, right? Like I think you and I were having a conversation last night and somebody suggested like the idea of vacation. You're like, oh, I don't even like vacation. I'm like, what?
I know. It's
like, I get it because I'm bad at vacations too. But like, I still want to go on one.
I know. I'm really bad at vacations because there's not much that's more fun than getting in a helicopter and flying out to like the Alaska range for 10 days and you just go hiking. Like, I don't really enjoy hiking on trails much anymore because like I'm used to just making my own. Like you're like staking a line out in the field or like you're prospecting or whatever. And that's just like, the most fun thing to me. And it's I just feel very fortunate that I landed on something that is like my passion is my job. And that's definitely a trope, but that's the truth in this case. And that's what I like to do. Like I I like to go out in the field and spend time with the team and think about the bigger picture of like what we're doing. Is this the right thing we're doing? Should we advance that project instead of this one? That is fun for me.
You keyed me up perfectly for other questions. Bigger picture and sharing sort of your love for what you do. Part of what we're sitting here doing today is filming a podcast. This was my way of having conversations that shared what I love, which is talking to people. But you now have someone on staff who videos and does amazing work, and you have these sort of interesting insights to a day in the life of Scout and these projects. And I think it's something I haven't seen. And what drove you to do this deliberately as part of Scout and something you're doing differently?
Yeah, I think exploration is inherently interesting to many people. The most successful reality show of all time is Gold Rush on Discovery Channel, right? Like, I think that's super telling. It's just interesting. The pursuit of gold, copper, whatever it is, that is just a very human thing that, it's that next ridge over there or whatever. Just, I think there's a lot of interest in that at a base level. And then the things that we use on a daily basis are what a lot of people do on the weekends. We have many side-by-sides and ATVs in the company that we use on a daily basis, just do our job. Drill rigs are awesome. This stuff is just really cool. And so you have this backdrop of an interesting thing, and then you're outside in our office is
it's pretty
amazing mountain ranges and just incredible places, and you roll that all together. And I think it's an interesting story that's not really told at all, like as far as I know. And this is the stuff I was looking for back in the day when I'm thinking about like, how do we pull together an exploration company and like what should that look like. The way we've approached marketing has been, let's just tell our story. Let's tell the story of what we do. And because it's inherently interesting, especially now as critical minerals are a thing that was not a thing 5 years ago, like even more, it's interesting. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about like how you do that, but it's just the way we've approached it is just tell this in a genuine way. Genuinely, what do we do? What does it take to push something to what we hope is a discovery? And just based on, we've really put an effort the last 6 or 8 months. We've watched our just followership on every single metric probably 10x in that time. And like, we're not putting out like the typical marketing content that I think most people don't realize how expensive that type of stuff is that most junior companies are putting out. We have one person internally that focuses their time on spending the time with the team to tell the story of what we're doing. And that has like multiple advantages in that you can tell the story for people who are not educated about the space. That's one thing that we really want to do is educate. What is the process of a discovery? Because most people think of exploration as just like, it's just a mine. So like, it's no different than a mine. Like it's a very different world. Like discovery is a very different thing than mining production. And so it's like, it's one bucket is the educational piece, but then the other piece is having that deep technical content. Like when I'm out in the field talking about why are we drilling Lehman Butte, one of our projects, like here's the reason, here's the outcrop, here's where the drill pad is. That's really useful for the sophisticated investor as well. The fund manager that wants to try to understand, like, does this project have potential? So we're trying really hard to balance the line between those two, because you want to bring in generalist people. Like we want more people to care about this space. And you do that by creating really nice content. Like, it doesn't need to be complicated. It's just like straightforward because it's an interesting thing. So.
I spend a lot of my time talking to students and dealing with industry groups and trying to advocate for our industry. And most people don't know about it. You go to an airport, somebody talks to you and they're like, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm in mining. And they're like, what? And then you have to have this whole conversation. And so I think the more content that is out there, the better. And there's also not much, like you said, on the exploration side. And because like you'll see like a coal mine and a conveyor belt and like all kinds of other stuff. But I think it's a really interesting concept to share this in a way that is accessible to like normal people. And so I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, we use it as a recruiting means as well. That's actually something I didn't expect fully. But we just have a form submittal on our website, like careers, right? And we're always looking for good geologists, good technicians, good drillers as part of the team. And we have probably gotten 50 to 75 inbound resumes from people that never would have heard about us otherwise, aside from like 30-second clip we put on Instagram that because we put in the forum, how did you hear about us? It's social media. It's actually really surprising. Like, we spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I did not expect that at all. And so we've hired a lot of people, especially on the drilling side, that would have been in oil and gas or other businesses that are more familiar, people are more familiar with, that they just don't know about exploration drilling and the exploration mining space. So that's been surprisingly useful on that front, for sure.
You sexied it up.
Yeah. I didn't do it. John, our
part of it.
Internal videographer, has done that.
As he's hiding over there.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah.
I guess some of the other stuff that I love talking about are the lessons that we learn in the midst of being founders and dealing with people and hard things in the decisions and the day-to-day, right? What are some of the things that you've learned, and what are some of the things that you love because of those hard lessons?
I think the most important thing that I didn't understand this early enough is that you have to jump off the cliff and build the plan on the way down. That's the really hard part about starting a company and building and growing a company, is like, the machine's not going to be built sitting there just waiting for you to get in the cockpit and take off. That will never be a thing. And I waited a long time for that, and just realized, like, we just need to do this. You just have to go for it. The other thing is you have to go 2 feet in. Like, you have to commit, because it's super hard. There were multiple months I floated the company on my credit card. And like, you have to be prepared to do that stuff. And like, it's a great story now in hindsight. It was super painful at the time. But like, we set it up in a way where success was the only option. Like, you just have to survive. And I think there's a lot of people who do want to start something, but don't necessarily set it up in a way where you just have to make it happen. Because there will be a million ways to be like, yeah, no, this is not going to work. We're just going to, I'm going to go do this instead. And so we set it up that way to begin with, where it was a burn the boats type way. You got to make it happen. And I didn't expect that. Like, I don't know. I consumed a lot of content around this. I'd certainly heard people tell this the same. Like,
you don't know until you do it.
No, and like, you get into it and it's just, wow, this is serious. This is heavy, but you just go through it. Like, you committed to what you're trying to build, and it's one foot in front of the other, more or less. And it's not always like that. Like, it's certainly the roller coaster. The highs and lows are correlated. So like, we've had some really big successes. We've had some really tough times for sure. And yeah, I think it's the biggest lesson for me is just commitment to a cause over the long term. Like, compounding is the 8th wonder of the world. Like, so long as what you're doing, it goes back to the first principles, is something that's worth doing. Just do the hard work over the long term, and you'll get there. You'll overcome the inevitable setbacks, the failures along the way. But if you just keep going, you give it the time, enough shots, then you'll get there. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I've taken away, aside from structuring a business model and that type of stuff. But really, the starting of a company, it's difficult. It's not for everyone. But if you have an itch to do it, you should do it. Just know that it's not going to be turnkey, like set up.
Also, I find that most people, myself included, that are in entrepreneurial spaces, we're like totally unemployable after that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm totally ruined now. Yeah, 100%. Like,
no one's ever going to hire me again.
Nope, exactly. Yeah, that's the same. Yep.
Have you ever read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth? Yeah.
Excellent.
So I feel like this story is that. It's grit. It's let's just dig in, one foot in front of the other, keep going. And there's going to be some shit, and there's going to be some awesome wins. And I find the same thing in my business, but like, it's one of my favorite things. And a client and someone that I've known for a really long time called me up and was like, Lindsey, I need you to find me a whatever. And it was like a really technical metallurgy type role for a shit location and all of this stuff. And he was like, but you know what? This person to be tenacious. And I'm like, what the fuck?
What does that mean?
Like, you're going to talk like all of these things. You want like a PhD metallurgist to work in BFE, and you're asking me to find someone who's tenacious? You want that in the job description? But I find that the people that are so much fun to work with have these like big, crazy, audacious goals and asks, and use words like audacious and tenacity and like whatever. And it's so not what we're accustomed to from some of the bigger groups, where everything is systemized and you have all of this stuff just laid out and it's like plug and play. And I think what you're asking for to be successful at times is like the idea of being different, the idea of embracing sometimes the suck and sometimes the win. And I think it's really fun to watch all of this happen. And so, like, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Scouts. So,
Appreciate that.
I'm here.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
But I guess in terms of parting and like being conscious of time, like, what would you leave listeners with outside of being awesome and tenacious and gritty and pursuing your goals?
I think life's short. Go for it. If you want to do something ambitious, we need more of that. Like, we need more ambition, creating of new things, building things. There are way more people who are carving value off things that exist already than creating new things. And I think that the more of that we have, the better. So yeah, just go for it.
Awesome. Where can people find Scout?
ScoutDiscoveries.com. That's an easy one. Most of the socials, we're all over. You can find me on many of them. But yeah, have a look at what we're all about. And what's that?
In the field?
In the field, yeah, in the field. But I have Starlink now, so like I'm still
apparently connected.
Starlink on my dash in my truck. It's wonderful. So.
You'll never be away.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with me. It's always so much fun to chat with you, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.